There is a border in Europe where a single unauthorized step can result in federal prison time. Located on a rugged peninsula in northern Greece, Mount Athos operates under its own laws of time. For over 1,000 years, an entire sex has been legally forbidden from setting foot on the land. The foundation for this modern law rests on an ancient, unverified tradition. According to the story, a ship carrying the Virgin Mary was blown off course during a violent storm in the 1st century. When the ship finally found refuge on this unmapped coastline, she was reportedly so struck by the raw, wild landscape that she asked her son to grant her the peninsula as her own personal garden. From that blessing emerged a strict, unwritten code. To honor her exclusive claim, no other woman would ever be permitted to walk upon this soil again. The historical accuracy of that voyage is impossible to prove. Yet, that single piece of folklore birthed one of the most physically enduring and legally rigid institutions surviving in modern Europe. By the 11th century, this local custom was codified into formal imperial law, known as the Avaton, meaning the impassable. Around 1046, Emperor Constantine IX Monomachos issued a decree that transformed the tradition into an absolute, permanent ban on female presence. The monks living on the mountain then took the decree to its extreme biological conclusion. To sever every possible tie to reproduction, they banned all female animals from the peninsula as well. This meant no cows, no ewes, and no hens. For centuries, the monastic diet was completely devoid of milk, butter, and eggs. Eventually, nature forced a compromise. Mice began destroying centuries-old manuscripts in the archives, prompting the monks to quietly allow female cats onto the grounds to hunt them. A second exception followed for hens, because the monks required egg yolks as a chemical binding agent to paint their sacred religious icons. To sustain an extreme, isolated society across hundreds of years, the inhabitants had to make these small, pragmatic concessions to the natural world. Today, men who wish to cross the border must obtain a rare, highly restricted permit called a daemonetrion. Once you pass the checkpoint, the physical location remains the same, but the measurement of time shifts. This diagram shows how Mount Athos operates on the Julian calendar, lagging 13 days behind the modern world. Following Byzantine tradition, their clocks are also adjusted. A new day begins not at midnight, but precisely at sunset. Living entirely outside the modern flow of time has a profound effect on historical memory. Grievances from hundreds of years ago are remembered and treated as if they happened recently. For example, men from the region of Catalonia were banned from entering the monasteries for generations, a direct retaliation for a violent mercenary raid that looted the mountain's treasures in the early 1300s. By manipulating the calendar and freezing their historical memory, the monks built an invisible psychological wall, effectively insulating their medieval society from the cultural shifts of the outside world. Despite these layers of physical and temporal defense, women have tested the boundary for over 7 centuries. In 1345, Empress Helena of Serbia sought refuge on the mountain from the Black Death. To comply with the strict phrasing of the law, she was carried everywhere in a suspended litter, ensuring her feet never actually touched the soil. In 1929, the French writer Maryse Choisy managed to bypass the checkpoints entirely by disguising herself in sailor's clothing to spend a month exploring the area. A year later, Aliki Diplorakou, the reigning Miss Europe, successfully wandered the coastline dressed in men's trousers before her identity was discovered. The breaking point occurred in 1953, when 22-year-old Maria Poimenidou toured the monasteries for 3 days under the guise of a man. Her infiltration sparked a national scandal, forcing the Greek government to intervene directly. Because the monks could not secure the borders on their own, the state stepped in, formally upgrading a centuries-old religious custom into a federal offense, punishable by up to 12 months in prison. Long before the monks established their checkpoints, or the first imperial decree was signed, this peninsula was targeted for a completely different kind of project. Following the death of Alexander the Great, the architect Dinocrates proposed carving the entire 2,000-meter peak of Mount Athos into a colossal statue of the conqueror himself. Ancient historians record the proposal as a serious architectural plan, though the massive cost and logistical nightmares ultimately caused it to be abandoned. The mountain was left as raw stone. Today, that untouched stone watches a steady stream of massive commercial cruise ships pass by its cliffs, full of tourists getting as close to the shoreline as the law allows. Yet just beyond the trees, the interior remains perfectly static. The monks continue their daily routines exactly as they have for a millennium, operating behind a legal boundary that hasn't been successfully breached in over 70 years. Mount Athos remains an isolated anomaly, the only location on the continent where an unbroken medieval law dictates the terms of modern existence. If you had the required permit, would you cross the border to experience this preserved piece of history for yourself? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the strangest surviving laws on Earth.